Ah, good afternoon, everybody, and all 150 of you, and you keep coming into the room as we've started off. Welcome to the, what could I say, the big, fat, and dare I say, white Capitanian mayoral debate. I'm not Rebecca Davis. Rebecca has taken ill. She's indisposed. But she has left me a formidable list of questions and instructions for the politicians here. So the rules are also, so here we have our mayoral candidates today. We have Brett Herron from Good, Geordin Hill-Lewis from the incumbent DA party, and we have Cameron Dugmore from the ANC, not a mayoral candidate, but a head of elections in the Western Cape. Welcome.
That's right.
To all
Thank
three
you.
of you gentlemen. Just quickly, the rules of the game is that these are stern and disciplined sets of questions that I have, and there is no spitting or swearing or stabbing allowed at any point during the discussion. I'm going to give you each sort of 3 minutes, or it wasn't me who's giving you the 3 minutes, it's Rebecca, about why we should vote for them. There's a strict time limit, 3 minutes, and we, I think, let's start off with the incumbent, I suppose, which is you, Geordin, and the DA, representing the DA. Far away.
Thank you so much, Marianne and Daily Maverick, for this invitation, and good afternoon to my colleagues, Mr. Dugmore and Mr. Herron, and to all of our viewers at home. Marianne, there are two parties in South Africa, maybe two parties only, out of the many hundreds of political parties who are registered, who have a track record in government. That is the Democratic Alliance, the party I'm proud to represent, and the ANC. One of those parties, the ANC, has a track record of really indisputable decline and widespread corruption and the slow collapse of the state's capacity. The other party, the DA, has a very proud track record of good government, of clean audits, of zero tolerance for corruption, of getting the basics right, and of moving steadily in the right direction wherever we govern. That should be as much of a choice as one clearly needs in this election. But in Cape Town, we are saying that we are now ready to go even further than simply being the government of getting the basics right and of clean government, and to do more for Cape Town by acting boldly to protect the residents of Cape Town from the worst consequences of collapsing national services under the ANC. We are going to do that by pushing out the boundaries of local government policy space and starting to fill the vacuum left by the receding state at a national level, particularly with respect to load shedding, by ending load shedding in Cape Town, with respect to public transport, by pushing for the devolution of the rail function to competent metros and provinces where that's possible, and in policing, by filling the space left by the collapsing SAPs to keep Cape Townians safer by deploying more law enforcement officers in communities.
1 minute
in this way, 1 minute. In this way, we are not only being satisfied with being above average in South Africa when the average standard is set so terribly lowly by the incumbent in so many of those other towns and cities, but we are actually lifting our sights, lifting our aspirations to say, how can we now do even more to improve basic services, to give more dignity to more South Africans where we govern, and to protect those South Africans, protect those Cape Townians from the consequences of that receding state. I think that is a optimistic and hopeful vision for the future of Cape Town, and that is why we ask Cape Townians to please support us on the 1st of November to secure your future in our wonderful mother city home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geordin. I think let's move to you, Cameron, as a representative of the official opposition in the Western Cape. You're not a mayoral candidate. Explain to us first how it works in terms of who your mayoral candidate will be, and then perhaps also answer the same questions. Why should we vote for the ANC?
Thank you, Marianne, and greetings to the viewers and the colleagues. The ANC has decided, Marianne, that all of our mayoral candidates throughout the country will be announced after a vetting process approximately 1 week after the elections. That is a decision that we've made, given the shortness of the campaign and also the fact that we are campaigning on what the ANC value proposition is. And essentially, that amounts to the fact that we are about building communities together. So in other words, local government as the sphere closest to the people needs to actually involve communities in every aspect of their lives. We as an organization would be the first to admit that there have been serious mistakes made by ourselves, but we often forget that the track record of delivering free basic services of water and electricity, the progress that has been made in regard to housing delivery across the country. And people sometimes wonder why the ANC continues to get support. It's because people ignore the fact that South Africa today is a very different place, but local government is a key focus. And what we are saying, one of the ways to begin to renew the organization, and that's a campaign that the president and the organization is leading, is to deal with corruption, to deal with nepotism, and to deal with patronage, which we find in many of our local governments. So what we've done, we've had the most inclusive and democratic process to choose candidates that are able to live up to the pledge that they have signed. For instance, last night we had our almost 800 candidates in Worcester, where with the president through a live link up, all of our candidates committed to that particular pledge. So what is happening, Marianne, is that the culture of the ANC, led by the president and the NEC, is actually changing towards focusing on renewal. And in Cape Town itself, we have a divided city, a city for the haves and the have-nots, a DA that's had 15 years and has actually seen the worsening. If you go to our communities, potholes, blocked drains, the lack of response, city housing that is not being maintained. And essentially the ANC is saying that we have 10 priorities for Cape Town, a community-based cleansing process, and actually a proper cooperative approach to dealing with public transport. The problem with the DA, they want to fight, they want to blame, they complain, and the people are suffering because of the fact that they're trying to get short-term wins. We, as the ANC, would bring a district development model to the city, a cooperative approach as per our constitution, and at the end of the day, make sure that services don't just reach the rich elite, which is the DA support base, but actually reaches people on the ground.
Thank you very much, Cameron. Brett, small party, but loud and all over. Welcome. Why should we vote for good in the Western Cape?
Well, thanks very much, Marianne. I think let's start by saying we're a new party. The outcome of these elections will show whether we've grown or not and whether you can really call us a small party. I think let's start saying that Cape Town has everything that we need to enable all of our residents to make progress. We have, I think the majority of our people in Cape Town have a generosity of spirit, a culture of tolerance, a culture of care that is the epitome of the mother city. And by mother city, a home for all, where everyone is welcome and where we nurture those who have been left behind. We've had the world's attention. We played an outside role on the world's playing fields, and we can still do so. And we can capitalize on that curiosity and that interest in our city and convert that to job-creating investment in our city. So, Marianne, we can make progress if we have a government, we believe, that embraces that spirit and that culture and that global reputation, rather than a government that is myopic and that seems increasingly intolerant of diversity and of the complexities of rapid urbanization that we're experiencing in our city. You know, I mean, it goes without saying we have some of the finest neighborhoods in the world, and this demonstrates to the world and to everybody who lives in Cape Town that we have the ability, the financial ability and the technical ability to achieve livable, functional service communities. But we also have some of the worst neighborhoods in the world, where children are dying in play parks from poorly maintained play equipment, where sewage flows down the streets like rivers, and where the road network is completely undrivable. We have people who are so hungry. On one occasion, I was told by a young man on the Cape Flats that he is so hungry that he resorts to slaughtering cats and dogs to eat. So this is not a city that I think that is in the reality on the Cape Flats and in most communities doesn't really reflect the true potential of our city. So we have to address the absence of infrastructure, the failing infrastructure in some communities, the hunger, the unemployment, and the unaffordability of municipal services, which is really driving people to choose between putting food on their table and buying electricity. We can't be a city where we are attaching people's furniture to sell on auction for their inability to pay their municipal water account. Water and electricity are basic services that should be affordable for all. And once we start investing in infrastructure, creating one standard of infrastructure for all communities, we will not only create a dignified living environment for every community, but we'll start to issue contracts and tenders to the construction sector, which is desperate for the work, and create jobs. And we will also offer a functional city to the whole world who wants to invest here.
Great. Thank you very much, Brett. Sounds good. We're going to just delve a little bit into some of the questions that Rebecca has prepared, and I think there are some already there. And we'll take on some of these issues a bit later on in terms of, if we can, and cross-question each other around it. A question for Geordin. Cape Town works beautifully for those of us in the middle class, but less well for people who live in townships. And all those of us who've driven through these townships, and I have done so, bear witness to the truth of the sewage, condoms in the street, in some of those places, litter that's not picked up, and various other sort of eyesores or health hazards that exist in this lovely province. What has the DA done in practical terms over the last 5 years to make life better for the poor? We know life for the rich in the Western Cape is really great, and that's why people are investing, and that's why some of us cash in our retirement annuities to pay our electricity bills. But that said, let us know, what have you done in the last 5 years?
Okay, thank you for the question. Let me just start out by acknowledging one of the key reasons that I decided to run for mayor is because I've spent most of my career, the last 10 years, working in the poorest parts of Cape Town, in the southeast of the city, in Philippi and Crossroads and Kosovo and so on, and have seen how much work there is still to be done in Cape Town to give people the services that they need for dignity and to have good communities and reliable services. So I am absolutely committed. That's a large part of my passion and my heart to make sure that the city does more investment in infrastructure, more to improve basic services in those communities. At the same time, I think that it's important that we acknowledge, if I may just finish, Mayoral, I think it's important that we acknowledge at the same time that on every single objective measure of government and delivery for the poor, Cape Town comes up absolutely tops. And that was confirmed yesterday again by another independent index of service delivery run by News 24, the so-called out of order index, which found that all DA government municipalities are again right up tops for service delivery to the poor on every metric, on access to basic services. For example, on free basic services, Cape Town spends more than Johannesburg on free basic services to the poor, a city with double our population in Joburg. So we are doing a lot, but there is absolutely much more to be done, and I'm committed to doing that.
Okay, well, we might return a bit later on if you to some perhaps concrete examples that you can give us, because I think it's good for some of the citizens and ratepayers to actually have a look at that. A question for Cameron. The ANC has absolutely its back to the wall in these elections, and I think you know that, and you've acknowledged that in your introduction. We all know the state of municipalities nationally, and we know that the vast majority of the worst governed municipalities are the ANC. Which I just want to say, kind of in a way, if the DA is measuring its service delivery against that, then the bar's low, but I'm not saying it is. Why on earth would we trust you with Cape Town if that is the situation before our eyes elsewhere?
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. Just to say that what very few voters are aware of was that in 2016, the ANC won 1 out of 30 municipalities through winning by-elections, through the disillusionment with the DA. We are now governing 10 municipalities through coalitions or outright in the Western Cape. And that is because people have rejected the DA in the rural areas. I don't think in the city of Cape Town, the DA is going to have an easy ride, because there are three issues here. One is our activist base has been energized by the leadership of the president and the NEC. Number two, you have a situation where our candidates have been selected through a very thorough process. Number three, there's absolute anger at the spin and essentially the lies of the DA in terms of issues of service delivery. So there's a new energy in our organization. We've made commitments in regard to what we're going to do, and our orientation is clearly pro-poor. We're inclusive, we're non-racial. We believe that we would be able to bring a greater unity in the city, and by actually focusing on releasing land, stopping the sale to private developers, there will be a greater sense of equity, a greater sense of inclusion, and we have got excellent candidates in the city that can truly transform and unite, but be committed to redress and say to the rich and the wealthy, unless our city is equal, unless we unite the city, and that is the energy that is we've been in our ups and downs in the ANC. We're on an up now, we're on a renewal path, and we will address the needs of the poor, which will result in an equitable city and a safer and a happier city.
So it's almost like we are the prodigal son of political parties, and we've got to welcome you back and forgive, which, I mean, forgiveness is a big theme in South Africa, but that's sort of where it lies, I suppose, at this stage. Forgive
the issue is, why has the DA been rejected in 10 municipalities? And let's see what happens on the 1st of November. They've been rejected because they look at the elite, and the ANC brings a community-orientated approach and candidates who have the respect of communities.
Great, thanks, Cameron. Brett, for you, Good often appears to be a two-person party, yourself and leader Patricia de Law. So how can we trust such a small party with the running of such a big city?
Well, Marianne, I think, if you look at the depth and the experience of the candidates that we're fielding in this election in Cape Town, you will, we can answer that question quite easily. That the party is much bigger than just Brett and Patricia. We have attracted the most diverse range of skills, experience. Our youngest candidate is 23, our oldest candidate is 75. So I think we're offering the city of Cape Town skills, experience. Some of that experience was gained inside local government, but most of it was gained outside of government, but in professions and other occupations. So we have a diverse range of experience and skills that we're offering the people of Cape Town. If we look at the last 2 years or so, and you say, how can we trust such a small party? You've seen in the last 2 years since we were formed, in all of the by-elections that we've contested, I think 13 in the last 2 years. We've been the party that has been able to take a ward off the DA in George, come a very close second to taking the ward off the ANC in Oudtshoorn, and everywhere else we've come a close second. In one case, we lost a ward by 5 votes to the DA. So I don't think we are a small party. We're a new party, and these elections will show how we've grown over the last 2 years, and that we will probably be in government in many parts of this province in particular, and maybe even in Cape Town.
Great, thank you for that, Brett. And now we get to a question in the middle of this, which we have to ask. And what is your response, all three of you, to the fact that at the moment we have 3 white men debating how Cape Town should be run and led? I mean, it is an elephant in the room, and let's address it in whatever way you would like to explain the situation here in 2021. Let's begin with yourself, Jordan, again, as the incumbent.
Yeah, sure. I'll get to the race question in a second. I just want to respond to something that Cameron said, if I may. He keeps using this word renewal, and you'll hear it in every one of his answers. It's obviously his message script for this campaign. But really, this is the party that has in recent months given us digital vibes, given us 15 million rand for some camp chairs and some grass that passes as a stadium in the Eastern Cape, that has stolen money from the funeral service of Winnie Mandela. They've got MECs being arrested for murder.
We've got a state capture commission. I think we know. I mean, I think voters absolutely know.
Where is the renewal? That is dead. No one trusts the ANC.
Okay.
The one point that I do agree with him on is that when he says that they are coming for Cape Town, and I want every Cape Townian to hear that warning very loud and clear that the ANC does want to win back Cape Town.
Okay,
Now,
well, I mean, that's not a bad motive.
That's what a campaign is about. That's what a campaign is about.
I just want to make sure the voters are aware.
They're aware.
More digital
Listen, the voters have been subjected to all sorts of political parties for the last few years, and all of us are extremely tired. So, we know what's up.
I just find it a bit.
Let's talk about the fact that we're talking to three white men. What does that mean for the majority of voters in the city in terms of diversity, in terms of, because these things do matter, and here we are sitting with the three big parties with none of that representational diversity. I mean, it is an issue, but let's talk about it. Jordan,
Sure.
do you want to speak? Yeah.
Happy to do so. I think that if Cape Townians cared only about race, that over the years there have been many other parties that they could have voted for in Cape Town, with mayoral candidates who looked like them or sounded like them or came from the same community or religious community as they did. The fact is they have not done that. They have consistently backed the DA because they want a party and a government that is going to get things done for them, that's going to offer them a sense of peace of mind, that their money is being well spent, that it is not being stolen, and that the city is making progress in the right direction. And everything that I have experienced in this campaign confirms that instinct that Cape Townians want a party that is actually going to govern well for their families, that's going to make progress in the city, and they back the DA to do that and will continue to do so.
Right. Cameron.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. This is really about race, which is a key contradiction in our society, and in particular in the DA. It's not just about whether Jordan or Brett, and in my case, I'm not the mayoral candidate, are white. The reality is, if you look at the DA's very DNA, they get rid of Madigizela, the MEC, on the basis of allegations of CV fraud, but JP Smith and Marius Kun remain in their positions. So the way they treat their own members is a reflection of what Jordan represents. He represents a racist party, a party that treats white members different to colored and black members. But from our point of view,
I was going to say, that's what I'd like to say. Yeah.
Fiona Abrahams, who's one of our candidates in the city of Cape Town, went up against Jordan the other day and basically showed that she knows much more about local government in the city than he does. So we've got so-called colored women, we've got African women, we've got African women, we've got white candidates. I'm not the mayoral candidate. We're a non-racial party.
The DA also has candidates who are.
The point I'm making, if this is about race, the very DNA, the colonialism legacy, the apartheid legacy, the way they treat, shows that at their core, they are racist. So it doesn't mean that Jordan it's wrong to have a white candidate, but the party's protection of privilege is about whiteness and preserving that. That's their problem.
Brett, same thing. What's your feeling, being the mayoral candidate as a white man?
Yeah, Marianne, I think it is a relevant question. I think representativity and diversity is relevant, and so it's a legitimate question. When I was announced as the mayoral candidate for the Good Party, we didn't know who was going to be announced by the other parties. I think that we have to look at the fact that if I'm elected mayor, I don't get to govern on my own. You govern with colleagues, and if you look at the full extent of our candidate offering, you will see the diversity and the representativity that you would expect to see from a progressive political party looking to make change in Cape Town. So you will see the representativity and the depth of experience in our candidate list. But I think it's also a question of values. I think that voters are looking at values of our candidates, and I'm leading the campaign clearly in Cape Town, but it's about the values of our candidates. And I think when we start to talk about values rather than race, and we ask ourselves, is there a place for white women and white men to make a contribution to their country? I think the answer is yes. For the right people, the people who have the right values, they should be able to make a contribution to their country or their city, and to even lead their city or their country. ultimately it's not a question of the color of the skin. I mean, the color of your skin is skin deep. It's really about the values that you are sharing with communities. And I've had nothing but an amazing response from communities.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to hope that what you do and your instinct, all of you, is to point out the others, the log in each other's eyes. But I understand this. But what's great, what's beneficial for the people tuning in, 333 of them, welcome to all of you for being here and this lovely discussion, or kind of where we're heading. But the question that we really do need to ask is one that's burning in Cape Town. It's why there's still no affordable housing close to the city. And what does the DA intend to do with this, about this? And I know that there's some levels of housing provision that are national, but from the Metro's point of view, we have a problem. We have a housing problem. There are people on the streets. We see them. They're homeless people. It seems the policy the city is adopting towards that is that it's criminalizing this, with the same attempt to also rehouse people, but that's not going to solve the huge backlog. Geordin, 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. I've started this campaign. This was the thing that I discussed first up because it is very important to me. I've started with a firm commitment from my side that if we are re-elected to govern in Cape Town, we will do better in releasing the well-located city land that is in the central city for the foster affordable housing development for more Cape Townians. I've been absolutely upfront with that commitment. I'm happy to be held accountable to it. And I've always started this discussion with that commitment first. I've also coupled it to say that it is just a statement of fact to say that the land that is the well-located land that is owned by a national government in Cape Town is 72 times the size, Marianne, of all of the city-owned parcels combined. 72 times the size. So if we really want to break the back of the housing shortage in Cape Town for affordable housing, we've got to have a release of some of those enormous pieces. We've got 5 pieces of military land in a city the size of Cape Town. It's totally unnecessary. Now, so what I've said is, coupled with my commitment that I've just made, what is the commitment of the national government to release at least one of those pieces of land? And we've asked specifically for Acacia Park because that is a move-in ready, with houses built, train station built, schools, parks built already. It's ready to go, social housing project. And the minister who is responsible for this in the ANC national government, Minister Patricia de Lille, is responsible for this housing, has promised for years, more than 10 years now, that she has wanted this housing to be released, this land to be released rather, for housing, and yet has not done so. So again, this is my firm commitment. We will make faster progress, and and I have no doubt that you will hold me accountable to that, and that's absolutely fine. But what is the commitment of those with 72 times the size land parcels to do the same? I have not heard that commitment, and I've seen absolutely no progress on it since those people have held those positions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Cameron, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Where there's a complete contradiction in what Geordin is saying is that they continue every week, every month to sell city land to private developers, which could be used for social housing. That's the first thing. So we are calling for the stopping of all sales of municipal land. Secondly, they haven't released in a transparent way an audit which looks at all of the land, national, provincial, parastatal, and municipal. And for 15 years, his party has failed to develop a single city piece of land for integrated development. And the reality is they have not spent the money that they've been given by national government to upgrade informal settlements. So they have failed there. We should be looking at the issue of backyard dwellers and the incredible work that some of the NGOs in our city are doing, where you have a house in one of our Cape Flats or township areas. That person is essentially a landlord. You help them with a loan to upgrade so that they can literally create 2 or 3 rooms accommodation, link the services so that we accommodate people and actually assist at that level. The city isn't committed to these programs. So the reality is there's talk, but the DA is funded by developers we want them to do certain things and not to do others. And that evidence against Geordin has come out in terms of how they manipulate developers to fund certain things. So we cannot trust the DA to deliver to the poor. We say, stop the sale of private land. And again, a cooperative approach. Don't throw stones at national government. Sit down and talk about it.
Okay. I've always wondered why developers couldn't be legally taking on the provision of low-cost housing as part of a deal. I'm not sure if that is even an innovative thing to do, how controversial it might be. But Brett, let's move to you, because this is something you've really looked at. And then I'm going to take some questions from our viewers this afternoon. There are a lot of very good questions. I don't know if you can see some of them. Some of them are the Murin, but you know, you're politicians, you expect that. And some of them love you as well. Brett, sorry, 3 minutes.
Well, Mario, look, I mean, good was really started on the back of a fallout that we had with the DA leadership around making public land available for affordable housing. I mean, the DA have been in government in the city for 15 years and 12 years in the province, and not a single affordable housing unit has been built or developed in the inner city or anywhere close to it. And so it's disingenuous for Geordin to try and separate himself from that track record. It is the DA's track record, and Geordin is very much part of that track record. And so must take responsibility for it. And now to claim that he would deliver what he was instrumental in stopping is disingenuous. You know, in 2017, we came the closest to delivering inner city affordable housing when we released 5 sites in the inner city for affordable housing. And exactly as you said, using the private developer to assist us in delivering mixed income, mixed use developments on these public land sites, where the developer would leverage the value of the land in those well-located areas to enable them to provide affordable and social housing. So there is the opportunity to do so. We must release the land that we started in 2017. We must put that back on the table and release it, dust off that prospectus. But there are other sites that are available too for affordable housing. In 2012, the provincial government released an inner city regeneration program. It contained 3 or 4 sites that were going to be released for affordable housing, but it never happened. So I think that the DA's credibility and track record on delivering affordable housing using public land is non-existent. They failed in 2012 to follow through, and in 2017 they cancelled the projects we started.
Okay,
sorry,
so great, you can, but I'd like us to try and track you. I'll let you answer, Geordin, but I don't want us to divert attention.
Thank you.
From the next question.
I do just want to reply, though, because I'm afraid that Brett has got absolutely no claim to credibility or integrity on social housing in Cape Town. He was literally in charge of the city of Cape Town as the right hand of the mayor for 8 years. For 3 years, his party has been in coalition with the ANC nationally in a position of power with direct control over well-located land in Cape Town. And in those 11 years, there has been absolutely no progress to speak of. So the only person, in fact, Mr. Dugmore has got more claim on this phone call to be the change candidate than Mr. Herron does. Mr. Herron literally ran this in Cape Town for 8 years and did nothing.
I'm sorry, Mayoral, that's not true.
Okay.
That's simply not true.
Let Brett
He has
respond.
no credibility on this, no integrity on this.
No, it's not true.
Great, Geordin.
I'm sorry, Mayoral. I have to be able to respond. I mean, I never ran the city for 8 years. I was responsible for transport. I was made responsible for public housing on the 1st of January 2017. And within 6 months, I identified the 11 sites that we wanted to first release for affordable housing in the inner city. But Geordin knows full well that no individual has the power to make those kinds of decisions. And when you have a caucus that denies you the right to implement your projects, as in the DA, you are bound by those caucus decisions. And Geordin was involved in blocking those projects by working with the people in the caucus who were saying no. My last DA caucus meeting was when I resigned when they wouldn't release the Salt River market site for affordable housing. And I was told by the deputy leader of the DA caucus that spatial transformation is a swear word in the DA. So it is
okay. You've got receipts. You've got receipts, and there they are. He's got receipts. But look, let's go to some of our viewers' questions here. Sia Kruger is asking, what is each of the parties' strategy for GBV, which is a huge problem in the province, and also gangsterism, but we won't get to there. We'll talk about safety and security just now. GBV, countrywide a problem, but particularly so in the Western Cape. Tell me, what has the DA done and will do for, to address this problem? Without, kind of looking at what is available in terms of social services and various other, services that could and should be supplied to communities by the Metro. Jordan, if you can answer that one.
Sure. We have put massive effort and resources into policing in Cape Town to make up for the extraction, the withdrawal of resources by the SAPS. We've invested nearly R1.5 billion with the province and the city into nearly 1,000 new law enforcement officers in all of the violent crime hotspots around the city. They deal with issues like murder, like gun violence, but also, of course, GBV. We've put a huge investment in resourcing. Probably our biggest single investment in this entire term in office has been in policing in Cape Town. We want Cape Townians to feel safer, particularly from violent crime and gun crime and GBV. And we have put our money where our mouth is. This has been very expensive. It's made up for the withdrawal of resources and the crunching of budgets nationally, but we believe it's necessary and worthwhile, and we will continue to do that by expanding that program and deploying hundreds more of those officers in the worst hits and worst affected communities in the city.
Cameron, what's interesting is I've seen that the overall commitment by the government to GBV in terms of law enforcement has filtered down in terms of sentences that have been handed down by the NPA for GBV. But as far as this province is concerned, what can the ANC offer people, in terms of trying to rid communities of the horrendous GBV and other violence that is just a daily occurrence, and it just claims so many lives.
Yeah. I think the first point is the ANC's policy to make sure that 50% of all of our candidates are women who are the primary victims of gender-based violence, and no other party can claim to have that. And that voice in the ANC is getting stronger, and the pressure around changes to the criminal justice system has been one of the pressures coming from not only women, but also men in the ANC. But local government has a critical role to play in the sense that when you look at basic issues such as lighting, every ward in the city of Cape Town gets an equal amount of R1 million, whereas there are wards in Khayelitsha, Mitchell's Plain, who are much less resourced. And issues like street lighting, issues like making sure that that women in particular are able to move from community to community. In our safety issues, we've also raised the issue of street committees, building those with what we used to have, the Bambanani volunteers, bringing those safety volunteers back to help to build street and block committees. But it's actually the patriarchy and the culture, and a city can't stand away from that. We have discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. We haven't seen the city coming out clearly on those issues. We haven't seen active moves by the city in regard to creating safer place, making sure that the unsafest communities in the township are properly lit, and that there are actually facilities which can work together with other spheres of government. So the city must also involve itself in the overall integrated struggle against patriarchy, but at a practical level, make the community safer. Street lighting, pathways, walkways are all things which make women more vulnerable than they should be. But our women in the ANC are driving this. They are challenging us men. And what we're finding, like I mentioned, the culture change in regard to renewal, which Jordan dismisses. The reality is when you in the ANC, for instance, are charged, you have to step aside. Jordan's party has got someone who was charged with money laundering, who is still in the council and higher than Dan Plater on their list. So our culture around patriarchy is changing, and ultimately it's about changing the society's culture. But for now, it's about lighting and safety in our cities.
Okay. Brett?
Marianne, I mean, it's a very important question, and I think if we're going to make any dent, if we're going to start to solve this problem, we have to shift our focus from policing to looking at the conditions and the circumstances that create conditions which are really conducive for antisocial and criminal behavior. So, I mean, we would invest in social programs in communities, invest in community facilities and the programs that need to operate in those community facilities. So we need to be focusing more on addressing the socioeconomic conditions, the social conditions, and the fact that in many communities there's an absence of community facilities. But where there are community facilities that are rented out, and there are no sports and recreation or community facilities or community programs actually operating in those town halls and community halls. But also we need to make sure that no victim of gender-based violence is trapped and unable to escape from the environment in which they've been abused. And this means we must make public buildings available to organizations that operate safe spaces for people to escape from an environment in which they are trapped or potentially trapped, so they're not held hostage in a home with nowhere to go. So it will be also making use of public buildings to provide shelter.
Right. I'd like to raise something now which is particularly close to my own heart as well, and Eskom is going to come into the responses that we're going to get about it, but so there's two things tied to this. The South African Climate Justice Charter has just been developed over the last 5 years, and are all of you aware of it? Is the city willing to have it endorsed? And how do you think of using it in the interest of climate justice for Cape Town citizens? Now, part of climate justice, which we'll talk about more in depth, is the provision of energy and renewable energy. Electricity is unaffordable in Cape Town, including for middle-class people. And as I said earlier on, some are cashing in their retirement annuities to pay off massive bills. Jordan, this is a crisis, we know, nationally. But what are the options on a metro level? And what are you, if you are the mayor, going to do about, in a sense, I mean, look at the sunshine we have. You arrive in countries like Australia and all you see are solar panels. And will the city penalize people who do want to go off the grid by charging them surcharges or levies in order to do so? So that's a very important question. So it's electricity, renewables, and climate change.
Absolutely critical question, and I'm very excited about this. If you followed my campaign, I've spent a lot of time talking about how we can reduce reliance on Eskom, because Eskom is extremely expensive. Prices have gone up 430% in the last 10 years, and we still don't have enough power. So Eskom is extremely expensive. It doesn't work. We still have load shedding. And of course, as you say, it relies almost entirely on coal-generated power. So it's extremely environmentally damaging. So the more we can reduce reliance on Eskom in Cape Town by buying independent power, buying power from so-called IPPs, independent power producers, the more we can incentivize Cape Townians to invest in renewable energy, the more we can reduce our climate impact, and we can end load shedding for Cape Town. I think that it is entirely technologically possible. It's entirely financially possible for the city to do that. It would be great for residents to start to pass on those savings as we buy more and more cheaper renewable energy, so that you can see those bills coming down over time. And it will be brilliant for our economy. It will be a boom to go to the country and say this is the only place in the country that's defeated load shedding, and that will be a wonderful signal for Cape Town. All that it requires is the political will to get this done, and I absolutely am going to do that. I'm obsessed with this because I think it's important for our residents and for our local economy.
And also, if you could just respond then, of course, to the water crisis and what that exposed about the response to the drought, which was, I think, 2 years ago or pre-COVID. You know, it was quite a traumatic time for residents of the Western Cape. And that was handled, I think, rather haphazardly and badly, but we survived it. So, you know, those are very, very key concerns for this region. But
Yes,
Cameron, I don't know if you wanted to talk about whether the ANC would endorse the Climate Justice Charter and its ideas around renewable energy and affordable electricity and energy for people of this region.
Yes.
Considering ESCOM's mess.
Yeah, I think the starting point is that in this province, even though the provincial constitution provides for an environmental commissioner, whose task would also be to look at issues of resilience and how one actually anticipates and prepares for climate change, they've absolutely refused it, once again under pressure of the big developers. So I don't think the DA has been serious about sustainable development of our environment. That's at one level. Our president has given a clear direction in regard to renewable energy, the energy mix. The reality is we're in a just transition from a coal-based energy system to a renewable-based one. And you can't simply fire tens of thousands of workers without a just transition. That's what we're busy with. But the door has been opened to the generation of power by independent power producers. It's been an incredibly successful program. The costs are getting cheaper, and it's the way to go. So the reality is that the city of Cape Town hasn't actually got a detailed plan. Over all these years, they've talked about having the plans, but their plans, according to their own admission, have not been financially viable. And that's why they haven't proceeded. So the reality is that it shouldn't just be certain middle-class families that are able to have solar, sell back. We've got to make this a mass program. Community cooperatives, every household should be able to, and schools. In the Eastern Cape, they're doing incredible work with schools, churches, open areas, and setting up energy cooperatives that sell to the grid. So we support that, but we challenge Geordin to tell us now, does he support an environmental commissioner for the Western Cape? All the political parties except the DA want the environmental commissioner, which is a provision of the provincial constitution. Will he support it?
Okay, we'll get to him now in that question. I just want to give Brett a chance to respond to the same question and issues. And we've got
thank you,
about 10 minutes left, and so hopefully we can get to some of the more very interesting questions.
Marianne, let's start with choosing what energy to procure as a city government. We're very clear on this as one of our 4 pillars of justice, environmental justice, that we would procure our energy in the city as from renewable sources only. We would disinvest from our public funds from fossil fuel investments. We would increasingly issue green bonds to fund and finance resilient infrastructure. We would introduce the PACE model. This is where those who are homeowners would be able to purchase, with the city's assistance, solar energy systems in their homes and repay it with their rates account over a 20-year period. We would assist communities to form community cooperatives so they can generate the energy they require within their community and perhaps sell the excess energy back into the grid. And then for poorer communities, we would install solar panels in informal settlements in all of the city of Cape Town's council rental stock and on new public housing.
Great, thank you very much.
Marianne, sorry, you asked about water. So just saying on water, the DA has slid in essentially a drought levy through introducing a pipe levy, which has dramatically increased the tariffs for many in the poor community, besides the water cutoffs and the evictions which are happening. And I mean, that is something that we need to look at, is the actual affordability and the infrastructure. And that is where poor people are suffering and middle-class people are battling with those rates.
Okay.
And the pipe levy.
Sorry, I'm reply to that.
Geordin,
that is
reply.
That's very misleading. Cameron wants to talk about expensive tariffs. Every independent analysis actually shows that Cape Town Metro has the cheapest tariffs of any metro in South Africa. The cheapest tariffs, the lowest increases. Cameron's government had a national
study. Give us one independent study.
Cameron's government had a national.
Just give me one independent study.
We'll go and find it, Cameron. We'll go and have a look for it. And if Geordin, if you want to post the links to the study later, we'll share it with everyone watching. But continue. We're going to run out of time soon, but continue.
Cameron's government at a national level wants us to pay more for Eskom. They've baked in 15% increases in electricity prices for the next 3 years running, compounded. So I'm afraid he just can't speak about expensive tariffs where everywhere he governs, the tariffs are much more expensive than Cape Town. That is just not credible. In Cape Town, what we're going to do, while he's fighting for more money for Eskom, we will be fighting to reduce our reliance on Eskom so that we can pass on the savings to residents.
Okay, good. We've got 5 minutes left, and there is a question that's come up repeatedly in everyone's questions, is the spatial apartheid of Cape Town. When one travels to other cities, there are still those divides that are historic. One sees them, but in metros like Gauteng, there's a sense of tremendous diversity and integration, which one doesn't feel in Cape Town. The reasons for that are complex, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we can't work towards this integrated city and to somehow break down the spatial apartheid, which sort of seems to remain firmly in place. So, it would be great to see more diverse communities as one sees in Gauteng. What is the problem, Jordan, in the Western Cape? And we've literally got like 5 minutes each, so I'm sorry to spring this one on you, but what's the problem?
Well, I think it goes back to the commitment I made about releasing well-located city land to help affordable housing developments all across the city, so that there are more housing opportunities in every community. I'm absolutely in favor of that. I'm in favor of transport-oriented densification to allow building and development, so that there is new supply of housing in every community of the city, and so
have you got a timeline? You got a timeline for this? Because you're the incumbent, I'm going to pressure you a bit. You got a timeline where you can say to us, listen, by then, if you vote me in, I'm going to have so many houses and the transport system's going to be up and running. We're going to sort out the taxi violence and that other stuff. What's the timeline?
Well, everything that is contained in my manifesto naturally relates to what I hope will be my first term in office. And so that is the timeline, and I'm happy to be held accountable for that when we meet again before the next election.
Great. Cameron, if you just want to finish off, I know it would be nice to pick up on issues.
Just 1 minute. The problem really is the DA, the lack of political will, and the fact that they serve particular interests and not the interests of those who would benefit from reversing apartheid spatial planning. Jordan should be telling us these are the 10 pieces of land. He can't even do that. They continue selling land. And the reality is there's provincial government land available, Tafelberg, that could be used. In Sea Point, there is the SABC building that we actually lobbied very strongly for, which is now under human settlements. And I'm convinced that people will get used to integrate, people want to slag off Joburg. You made the point. Joburg has done immense work in the inner city in actually making affordable housing available, making the city more diverse. The reality is the DA is a vestige of colonialism and apartheid, and they don't want to remove those things. So they are the problem.
You can buy an apartment
and we'll make progress.
You can buy an apartment for 220,000 or 450,000 rand in inner city Joburg, Magbaneng. There is no such property available for young people in the Western Cape. But that's different discussion.
There's state property available. There's state property.
But I mean at present, having been blocked. But Brett, you're going to have the last word here. But before we do go, I just want to thank you all very much for not spitting, stabbing, or doing anything else, and for trying your best to try and talk to the many issues people wanted to talk to you about, and for behaving so well, because if you get 3 white guys in the room, you never know what can happen. It can turn ugly. So thank you for all of you, and for all of you who've sent all your questions. We'll try and send some of them on, and Jordan placed that independent link survey, send it on. Brett, you have the last word as one of the contenders in this race.
Thanks, Marianne. I think we have to start with the realization that we have an inefficient urban form in our city of Cape Town, and the way we build public housing perpetuates that inefficiency by building public housing on the outskirts of the city, but it also perpetuates the apartheid spatial plan and the apartheid spatial legacy. By building large-scale public housing projects on the outskirts of the city, keeps poor people outside of the city and perpetuates this inefficiency, which is bad for our climate and bad for the costs of operating our city. So we must build within the urban core of our city using public land, including well-located public land that we spoke about earlier, to address the apartheid spatial legacy and to overcome it. So we must build in the core, in the city centre, in suburbs and CBDs like Claremont and Wynberg and Belleville and Parow, using public land that is available there for both affordable housing, that is those people who don't qualify for free basic housing, but we also need to build the free basic housing within the urban core and not push poor people out to the outskirts of the city, 40 kilometers away from any work opportunities, perpetuating their exclusion.
And I do think one thing that does concern all Cape Townians, and it is something that people speak to me about because we see it every day, and that, Jordan, is of homelessness, that the problem of homelessness should not be criminalized. I think it might indicate an inhumane approach to a major crisis that many cities in the world face. And I think Cape Townians drive around and see fellow Cape Townians eating out of dustbins and sleeping almost naked in some places. And it is unacceptable. And I do understand you know that. But for me, that is just Marianne's personal last request, that the plight of the homeless really does be considered. It affects all of us. The poverty that surrounds us is just unspeakable. And I do hope that all three of you in the parties you represent will please take that into account. Cape Townians are tired, they're hungry, they're in pain, they deal with terrible violence and exploitation and high costs. And so please make it work for all of us. You three white guys, although Cameron, you're not, I don't know what you are. You could be anything in that corner for the ANC. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your participation.
ANC comrade. I'm an ANC comrade,
all right,
representing the organization.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, and for all of you for watching. There's a lot of cynicism, a lot of deficit in trust, but we have to actually hold these gentlemen to account. So when they come knocking, ask them the questions you didn't ask us today. Thank you very much, everybody. And
thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Brett.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.